What if I told you that once upon a time, there was a god worshipped in Africa with deep devotion, a divine being so powerful that entire kingdoms built their identity around him, and then, one day, he simply vanished. Not just from temples, not just from rituals, but from history itself. No one knows why, no one can fully explain how, and yet the traces of this mysterious disappearance still haunt the stories and traditions that remain. This is the mystery of the African god who disappeared, and today, we're going to dive deep into what might have happened. Across Africa, there have been thousands of deities, spirits, and divine beings that guided people's lives. Some of these gods are still remembered, like Shango, the Yoruba god of thunder, or Nyam, the Akan sky father. Others were woven into myths that survived colonialism, invasions, and the reshaping of cultural memory. But then, there are gods whose names were once spoken with reverence, whose shrines drew worshippers from far and wide, and whose legacy suddenly went silent. Imagine an entire faith erased so thoroughly that even scholars struggle to piece together what happened. That is where our story begins. The deity at the center of this mystery was said to be a guardian of balance, a god who controlled the harmony between life and death, the physical world and the spiritual. For generations, entire communities looked to him for protection, guidance, and justice. His name was once invoked in rituals of kingship, his symbols carved into sacred wood and stone. But then, like a candle suddenly snuffed out, his worship disappeared. No more temples, no more rituals. It was as if people had agreed never to mention him again. But why? Some historians suggest that colonialism played a role. When European powers carved up Africa, they brought with them new religions, often suppressing traditional beliefs. Missionaries labeled old gods as demons, sacred shrines were burned, and the memory of entire pantheons was branded as pagan superstition. In such an environment, it's easy to imagine how the worship of one particular god might fade. But here's the strange part. Other African deities survived. They lived on in disguised forms, hidden behind saints or blended into Christian and Islamic traditions. Yet this particular god was not preserved. He didn't transform or adapt. He simply vanished. Another theory suggests something far more unusual. Some oral traditions hint that the god himself abandoned his people. According to scattered legends, this deity grew angry when humans broke sacred laws or disrespected the cosmic balance. One story tells of a final ritual gone wrong, a king who disobeyed divine instructions, and a punishment that ended with the god withdrawing his power from the world forever. If true, then this wasn't just historical erasure, it was a spiritual disappearance. The god walked away, leaving no trace behind. And yet, hints remain. In certain villages, there are masks and carvings whose meanings are no longer understood. Scholars have found symbols that don't match any known deity, suggesting that they may belong to this forgotten god. In songs and proverbs, there are echoes of a divine being who once held immense authority. The silence in the historical record is almost too loud, like someone deliberately erased him from memory. But who could erase a god? And why would they? One of the most compelling possibilities is political. Gods are not just spiritual beings, they're tied to power. If a ruler claimed divine authority from a specific god, and then that dynasty fell, the new rulers might have tried to erase every trace of the old order, including its god. We've seen this throughout history. In Egypt, pharaohs tried to erase the memory of Akhenaten's monotheistic worship of Aten. In Europe, ancient Celtic gods were wiped from stone monuments when Rome conquered them. Could it be that the disappearance of this African god was a calculated act of political erasure, a way to break people's loyalty to the past? Still, the mystery deepens. Archaeologists who dig in the regions where this god was once worshipped find ruins of shrines but no clear inscriptions naming him. It's as if even his name was forbidden to be spoken. Anthropologists interviewing elders find fragments of myths, but always incomplete, like pages torn from a book. The god's identity is cloaked in silence, and that silence is as powerful as any presence. Because sometimes, what we don't remember tells us just as much as what we do. And here's where things get eerie. Some believers whisper that the god is not gone at all. Instead, he is merely waiting, watching, hidden in plain sight. They claim that the strange coincidences, the unexplainable events, the unbroken thread of mystery, all of it is evidence that he never disappeared. He simply chose to hide until the world is ready to acknowledge him again. To skeptics, that sounds like fantasy. But to those who still sense his presence, it means the story isn't over. So what really happened to the African god who vanished? Was he erased by colonizers and missionaries, stripped from memory like so many other indigenous traditions? Was he abandoned after a dynasty fell, his name banned by new rulers determined to rewrite history? Or was this disappearance something even stranger, a god choosing silence, retreating from humanity, waiting for a moment to return? The truth may never be fully known. What we do know is that across Africa, stories live in the land, in the rivers, in the forests, and in the memory of the people. Even when history books remain silent, the voices of ancestors still echo. And in those echoes, sometimes, if you listen closely, you can hear the faint heartbeat of forgotten gods. This is not just a story about one lost deity. It's a story about memory, power, and survival. It's about how fragile belief can be, and yet how enduring it is at the same time. A god may vanish from temples and scriptures, but as long as there is one whisper, one carving, one hidden song, the divine is never truly gone. Perhaps the real mystery is not why this god disappeared, but whether he was ever gone at all. So the next time you hear a forgotten myth, or see a strange symbol carved into a mask, or stumble across a story that historians can't fully explain, remember this: gods don't always vanish. Sometimes, they're only waiting to be found again. And maybe, just maybe, one day, we will.